So next up we have Caruana-McManus. Catherine is a proven digital city maker and innovator. Catherine is the founder of Giant Ideas for Smart Cities and Director of Sales for the IoT integrator Meshed. Prior to these roles, Catherine was Director of IBM's Smarter Cities and has held other senior positions with MC2 Consulting, PMP Limited and Telstra. Catherine has been recognised as one of Australia's Knowledge Nation 100 for her work in smart cities and big data. Please welcome Catherine. Red one, down there.
Thank you. Excellent. Oh, we're good to go. So I really loved Tim's presentation because it's kind of at the heart of me putting another provocation, which is, guess what? If we wait for government, it ain't going to happen. I've been in the cities business for 25 years. I started my career in local government as a strategic planner. In my first role, I was asked to go around the city with some coloured pencils and paper and mark up on these pieces of paper the land use of every building around the city of Stonington, Prahran, Windsor, all the cool spots of people for Melbourne from here. And I realised very early on that if I was going to wait for government to come up with things such as digital land use planning, it wasn't going to happen. So we created it, and we put it out to the market and transformed the way in which data for land use planning is provided. So my topic is around democratising the Internet of Things. And the reality is that when we talk about things, we're actually talking about people. Because the only reason why we want to connect objects is obviously because we want to do business better, we want to have better livability, we want to have happier lives. So you're kind of getting the gist of where I'm going to go. Some of the things that Tim has pointed I'm going to cover, but hopefully move on from there to say that it is possible and let's just get on with it. So today's reality is it's really around the connection of everyday devices. And interestingly enough, in Australia, the latest research shows that there's an average of a minimum of 5 devices connected in the home to the internet. And we're expecting that to go to about 9 to 10 by the end of 2017. So if you don't already have 5 of your devices connected to the internet at home, you're already behind the Australian average. So I know my husband does. We've got lots of water tanks in our house and he's built an aqueduct between the 2 water tanks and he monitors it almost on a daily basis. So the IoT opportunity is real. I mean, we've all heard about it. Lots of devices, lots of big numbers. You know, these are coming from McKinsey and Cisco and others, and I don't debate that. I think that's really important. Wow, you know, the global impact of 11.1 trillion. But what does it mean to us as Australians in this room? It actually means a lot because it's actually been measured by the great work that was done by the IoT Alliance last year that actually sized it to say that potentially the value to the Australian economy of IoT is 116 billion. But we've got to start somewhere. And I know in the mining and resources sector where I've spent a lot of my time, that is certainly happening in terms of their machine to machine. But if the facts are, and they are true, of Tim presenting that in the fin services area, it's just as large in terms of representing GDP, there's a huge opportunity in fintech, particularly when we're looking at things such as cryptocurrency and things along those lines. So this is the typical, I suppose, vendor view of IoT and smart cities, right? Here are all the bubbles. Have I missed anything? No? Okay, I've done well. So you can see that when we look at about the spectrum of smart cities, and I'm pleased to say that not one of my slides is going to refer to LED lighting, smart parking, Google or Tesla, okay? Because there's a lot of other stuff that's happening outside of those realms, which is really relevant of why individuals, that is all of the people in this room, need to get on board with moving forward on IoT in terms of what's important to you and your business. But the reality is that we've actually got a subnet of things. If we think about the way in which, even with the advent of open data initiatives, and I've got a really good example, and I'm not going to offend, hopefully, anybody in the room, but if you're the owner of motorways, it's in your interest not to share data. And one of the problems that we have with our motorways is that the motorway is the motorway. And everything else that feeds onto that are other network systems of which there is no data sharing. So that's what we think about when we talk about the Internet of Things, we've got to move from the Internet of silos into opening up the permission to actually have those conversations and share the data. And this has actually been sized. So Machina Research launched this month, and they've actually sized that in smarter cities, if we go open, it will accelerate growth by 27%, and it will reduce deployment costs of smart cities deployments by 30%. Not rocket science, but there's some value that's actually been sized. And I think that's really exciting that we're seeing the discussion around open standards and connectivity and interoperability, which we need to drive. So here's an example of basically how that's actually happening. If people familiar with the Hypercat UK initiative? It's absolutely fabulous. And you know, I look towards places in Europe, and particularly the UK, with their history of open governance, and of course now they've got the National IOT strategy. But at the heart of that, they're now at version 3, or the protocol or the standard. And it's hypercat.io if you haven't looked at the link. It's technical, so I'm sure that there's a lot of technical people in the room. I think you'll enjoy it. But essentially, what is it all about? It's about actually creating the ability for data that is ported to the internet to be able to be exchanged in an interoperable manner. It's as simple as that. And it's about getting vendors and others in the ecosystem to agree on those standards and move forward. The important thing is that if we wait for a decision on standards, they are so important, that will actually hold up the innovation. So what's really exciting is that they're engaging around getting out with the startups and getting, you know, with the industry and government to create these models, and they're doing that collaboratively, which I think is really fabulous. And there is some discussions about how we can bring Hypercat to Australia, which is really exciting. So Tim showed you the thing about the array of things. My point here is that as we have connectivity through big data, cloud, and mobility, it actually gives a sense of purpose for the average person on the street to engage around what does the city mean to them. Now, in Chicago, I'm a member of the Chicago Global Forum for Cities. They were given $3.1 million award to develop this. Now, what I think is exciting is that we are apparently in the idea boom, and a lot of us in this room are going to be spending time with Minister Angus Taylor to convince him that we need to start thinking big. But small at the same time, so we don't lose sense of what is the purpose, what's the problem we're trying to solve. So in Chicago, their issue is that it's quite a fragmented city. And the whole idea about having this Fitbit for the city is to look at things such as safety and amenity and pollution, lighting, all of those things, and to build it in a model that is scalable. So it's really exciting. But has anybody seen this, the Smart Sensor Kit? So Amsterdam won this year the European Union's European Commission's award for the most innovative city. How did that happen? Because with their thinking about smart cities, and I've been working in Amsterdam for many, many years, at the heart of it, they're thinking about how they build models which people on their street can actually build out to their own purposes. So this was a Kickstarter campaign to build out these smart sensor kits, and of course they're now looking for partners globally about how they do that. And in that comes a whole host of other innovations, all roads leading to Amsterdam, being of course the Things Network. And this is Winky, and we know Winky, we have lots of calls with Winky, because my other interest in Mesh, we're an initiator for the Things Network. And their vision was our vision is to build a decentralised, open and crowdsourced Internet of Things network. And the really exciting thing is that it's owned and operated by the users. Now, go back to the first point that when I got up and said, I think that if we wait for government, it's not going to happen. The exciting thing is that just like the phenomena around Uber, where individuals are taking now their decision about better services in transport, there is such an exciting opportunity for us to do the same with IoT. And I think that the pie can be grown to be enormous. And I think that the more open we are about doing that, I think it's going to really result in some fantastic innovations coming out of Australian cities. And I would like to think that in 4 or 5 years' time, Australia actually becomes the example that people in Amsterdam or in Barcelona or in London are sharing. So there's lots of people, just like this room here. They're the network, creating the opportunity, crazy ideas. And within a period of, actually it was 4 weeks, they were able to look at basically crowdsourced use cases. One of the most interesting ones there is the We Share Solar initiative, which is where people can actually exchange solar, even if they don't have solar panels on their roofs, they can have access to the solar energy, and using IoT networks to do that. So that links in also with the growth around sort of what's happening in the renewable space. This is quite a cute one where, there's lots of little boats in Amsterdam. People use them to actually get around. They fill with water. A guy goes around, you pay them $2 a week to get the water out. And of course now they can work out which of the boats they're just about to sink. But if there isn't a model that I think is so clearly demonstrated about the way in which citizens are taking things into their own hands, because there is a lack of trust with government. It's one thing for governments to talk about open data, and we're going to share data. But there are a lot of communities that actually do not trust. And Japan's a classic example where in Fukushima with the nuclear meltdown, people weren't getting information. So now with IoT networks, using things such as open, public access IoT connectivity, this is actually monitoring the radiation levels throughout the course of the day and is being driven by people's needs for data. So just to close, the reality is these sorts of opportunities are presenting themselves well in Australia, and on the 26th of April, we actually ran a fantastic workshop with the University of Wollongong, the city, New South Wales Government and others, and we got 60 people in a room, and they started to brainstorm about how they could actually use these public access gateways and what could come out of it. And we had some winning ideas. Like this one with the smart building health monitoring has got interest from the Illawarra Retirement Trust. They look after large estates of aged care housing and have been wondering about how do they monitor the performance of those estates. And then what I thought was really cute were this group called the Cultural Promoters, who got up and said, look, we've got dolphins and whales and we've got all these wonderful things, but people don't think of Wollongong. So is there a way that we could use the Internet of Things to promote the beautiful assets of the Illawarra? So to summarise, IoT for smart cities is critical. And I've got to say, I'm actually more excited about the Internet of Things than I actually feel now that I was about when we moved from the Netscape and what environments into the World Wide Web. I remember the day I was at Telstra Research Labs and the World Wide Web appeared on our screens, and we were going, oh my goodness, isn't that incredible? And the reason for that is that if we do it right, and if we engage people, and we liberate around openness and connectivity and interoperability, we can really unlock the economic potential of regions. And it's by no mistake that I've been spending quite a bit of time in WA and regions like Bunbury and places like that, where they don't have a choice. Connectivity in those sorts of regions and those sorts of environments mean that the Internet of Things can actually help them with things such as their smart farming and their transport and all those sorts of things. So look, that's just a closing, a point around the fact that yes, we need privacy and security, and that's a given, but hopefully I've shared with you the point that if we give it to the people, it actually, I think, really exciting things can come out of it. So thank you.